In this video, we're going to be talking about the science and application of nutrition. Now, when Annie and I work with someone new, there's 4 main criteria that we need to cover in order for a nutrition plan to be truly tailored to get the best possible results. Energy balance, macronutrients, micronutrients, and adherence. Look, something we've been saying to athletes a lot is energy balance dictates your body weight. Macronutrients determine what you look like at that body weight. Micronutrients determine how you feel at that body weight. And adherence determines the quality of your life. Look, energy balance, this is the calories in versus calories outside of the equation, and it's critical that we go over this one first. This is energy in, because calories are a unit of energy and not a unit of mass. Energy in via food and drink that you're taking in per day versus energy out, which is your physical energy expenditure alongside the metabolic processes that also require a lot of caloric expenditure as well. This is what's ultimately going to determine your body weight. So if you have a muscle building goal, or if you have a fat loss goal, or if you have a maintenance goal, it doesn't matter where your mindset is at with respect to body weight regulation. Energy balance has to be there and is truly a deal breaker when it comes to any other nutritional principle.
There are a lot of things that go into designing a great program, but energy balance is the first place we start. If you need excess calories because you're either trying to gain mass or make sure you have plenty of energy for performance and recovery perspective, and you're not concerned if you add a little mass, either of those scenarios, we typically will keep people at somewhere between a 5 to 10% caloric surplus. There are situations in which we'll go higher than that, but that's a nice starting place to put somebody at that allows them to gain mass or have a little bit of mass increase. That's mostly going to be coming from lean mass.
As an example here, energy balance is so at the top of the equation that you could have the most local and most organically sourced ingredients in the entire world and have your entire diet made up from it and still eat your way into obesity if your energy in is greater than your energy out. That calorie balance equation makes your food selection obsolete because the calorie balance equation alone is what is going to dictate your body weight regulation more than anything else.
It's also a primary metric of performance. If you don't have enough fuel to perform and then more importantly, recover to do your next session, you're gonna be running into problems. So we have to manage body weight, whether it's our actual goal or it's just a metric of going in the wrong direction, performance-wise. Energy balance overall is a critical component. Now, it's not the only thing that we pay attention to, but it is absolutely our starting place and is also generally the easiest one to fix. Not that hard to add more calories, take more calories away in terms of execution. So going to that as our first stop to fix a lot of our problems is a common thing that we use in our coaching practice. Once we've got that dialed in, we move on to our next category, which is macronutrients. Here we're talking about protein, carbohydrates, fat, and then really another one that often gets forgotten, and that's fiber. Now, as a really high level overview, protein is used as structure. It's the building supply of not just your muscle cells, but everything in your body. Your red blood cells, your immune cells, all of your tissue requires protein. And so we really make sure we pay attention to that as we're trying to understand breakdown, recovery, and regeneration. So regardless of your goal, another way to say it, even if you don't care about maximizing muscle growth, we still have a huge emphasis on making sure protein is in the right spot. After that, we're starting to pay attention to now fat and carbohydrates. These are primarily there to provide us energy. They are different, there are pros and cons to them, they work in different phases, but that's how we're going to play with our total calorie intake, is by most likely manipulating one of those 2 variables based on your unique physiology, context, situation, previous experiences, known responses, and any other information we've got. The final one here is fiber, and there's a lot of benefits to that, but we want to make sure that it's not too low or too high. That creates all kinds of problems in your system if we get that thing out of whack.
Now that that's established, we need to get your micronutrients in check. Yes, calories are important. Yes, macronutrients are important. But micronutrients are what allow you to properly utilize the calories and macronutrients that you're taking in. They are involved in many enzymatic reactions, many nutritional intermediates for energy production pathways, many nutritional intermediates to actually form new hormones. Look, there is no nutritional biochemistry without micronutrients. These things drive all of the processes that you actually want outcomes on. If it's testosterone, if it's better sleep, if it's more energy every single day. Micronutrients are at the foundation of that, and a great and simple principle you can follow is to simply eat real food, okay? People have had many successes on the paleo diet, on the vegan diet, on the Mediterranean diet, on the zone diet, on low carb diet. It doesn't matter what diet you find, there's going to be certain success stories within it. But you'll never find a success story on an only processed food diet, an only fast food diet, an only packaged food diet. Why? Because people do not thrive on that type of nutritional subset. You need micronutrient density in your plan in order to be the absolute best version of yourself and get the vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, zoonutrients, antioxidants that you need in order to check all the boxes to drive all of those production pathways that we're trying to drive when seeking high performance.
Now you said something that's really important, and I want to make sure you really heard what Dan just said. When he said you won't find success stories, and then he said thriving. Here at Vitality, our standard is not, did you just make it to the race? Did you just hit that body composition? Are you still alive and not sick yet? It's thriving. And so really, micronutrients are what separate really high-level nutrition coaches and dietitians from people who can just give you calories and macros. That can be fine for just hitting a body weight or getting to a competition. But really, truly peaking your recovery, your endurance, your strength, and maximizing all the juice in your system requires micronutrient intake. And so this is that next level of standard. So other folks that you've seen have success who disregarded or paid no attention to the micronutrients, maybe they did succeed, but probably didn't succeed according to the Vitality standards.
Last but not least is adherence. Now, this is arguably the most important principle of all of them, because although energy balance, macronutrients, and micronutrients, they determine the physiologic output that we're after and what's really happening internally, none of that really matters unless you do it, okay? Doing the actual program is what gets you results. Biology doesn't respond in short-term situations. Biology is going to respond to averages over time, and that's what adherence provides. The most scientific program in the entire world means nothing if you can't follow it, if it doesn't work for your lifestyle, if it's not something that you enjoy, if you don't have belief and buy-in into it. These things are all massive parts of the equation, and sometimes the only part of the equation. Because if it's not there, then nothing else actually matters because you're not following. So adherence needs to be wrapped around the entire process of energy balance, macronutrients, and micronutrients, or really none of those principles matter.
You said earlier about how people can have success on many different styles of eating, nutritional programs, or diets, however you want to call them. What is consistent about all those, though, is adherence. The research is exceptionally clear here. The number one predictor of success on a diet is adherence. And so making sure you're playing a game. Look, all of us want to eat cupcakes and cookies and pizza all day. Like, I get it. Sure. So yes, there is a fine line between not just eating everything you want to eat at all times, and also not putting yourself in a situation where you don't love your food and it's unsustainable. And so we need to have a little bit of sacrifice that comes along with being a human, but also in a way that is sustainable. What that means is up to you. We actually use a system a lot in our coaching practice we call robot mode, which is we give people diets independent of how they are going to think about it or feel about it, because we have a specific goal that absolutely needs to happen in a certain time frame. I don't care about their adherence. But those are usually very short windows, 4 weeks before a world championship, 6 weeks out from a world title or a Super Bowl or a World Series or something like that, where we absolutely have to get a goal and the person knows there's a short-term goal in mind and we just have to get there. But that's not sustainable. And so the reality of it is, most of the time we need to find something that is probably a little more constraint than you want to have in your nutrition, but not so much where you feel like you're hyper restricted. A phrase I like to use a lot here is having a nutritional program that makes you feel abundant. You don't ever worry and think that much about all the things you don't get to have, because you spend so much time being happy with all the things you do get to have. And so reframing this about not from what is not good for me or what is bad for me, and to think about, look at all the choices I have that are great for me, is a really important component to driving adherence while still sticking to your program.
So to tie all of this thing into an example, if you wanted to have energy balance set for you, typically for muscle building, you would want to have about your desired maintenance is going to be calculated via, say, a Mifflin calculation where you can get your maintenance calculator, and then you would add a 5 to 10% surplus for muscle building. If it was fat loss, you would go a 5 to 10% deficit on fat loss. On the 5 to 10% on the upper end, you're going to be maximizing muscle gain and minimizing fat gain. And then 5 to 10 on the lower end is going to be maximizing fat loss and minimizing muscle loss. That lean tissue we want to protect on the way down, and we want to build on the way up. And it is the fat balance that we are trying to steer away from when it comes to energy manipulations in either direction. Moving into the macronutrients, once your calories have been hit, typically this is going to be driven from a few factors, most of which being driven by adherence, but there are some scientific principles we want to stay strong to. Your protein intake will be roughly 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight per day. Your fat, typically anywhere from 20 to 40% of your daily intake, depending upon what approach you are utilizing. And your carbohydrates will simply make up the rest of the calories that you will be utilizing in that macronutrient distribution, calculated from your energy balance in the beginning. After that, you will be moving into this micronutrient dense approach, where you typically want to have 6 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, ideally of different colors. And on top of that, utilizing healthy fat sources that are rich in nutrients as well. Things like optimizing the omega-3 to 6 ratio, having wild salmon in there, fish oils. These other things are going to play a huge role in the totality of the performance output and health you can expect from the plan that goes well beyond just calculating your energy balance. And then last but not least, you want to have the calories, the macros, and the micros in a meal structure, a meal frequency, and in a sequence and with food selection that you can remain adherent to in the long run, because ultimately that's what makes these principles matter the most. That is a typical and standard framework that you can use in order to approach nutrition and either go up or down and make this process move smoothly, starting from energy balance and moving your way backwards to make a plan and have a framework that's truly built for you.
A system I've used for a long time is what I call the cook versus the baker. What that means is all those 4 concepts Dan just talked about, your calories, your macros, your micros, and your overall adherence, can be put into 2 broad systems. If you are what I call a cook, this is somebody who doesn't need a ton of detail. In fact, details are too restrictive. They bring you down. You feel like it's too tight. I can't follow it. I'm having problems because you limited my options. For that particular person, you want to just maybe stick to the concepts. So we want to be eating roughly this many times per day. 6 times per day, 3 times per day, 2 times per day. That's up to you. Lots of different ways we go about that, but I'm just going to give you concepts. I'm going to say things like, hey, I want you to have a bunch of protein every meal. 6 ounces, don't worry about it. A bunch of protein every meal. Fill your plate up with vegetables, and the rest of the space you can fill up with some fat and carbohydrates. So something like that is not going to be specific and dialed. That's not 20% versus 25% carbohydrates. But maybe that would be too restrictive and cause that person to go away from their diet entirely. And so by just using the concepts or other tools like that, we can get them not perfect, but in this case, good is better than nothing. And so we're going to stay there with big concepts. To getting our micronutrients, we might use concepts like you just said. I want 6 different types of fruits and vegetables per day, and I want each one to be a different color. Something like that is a good example of a concept. It lacks detail, but in this particular person, that's what they need. So we could give them food items. We could give them different strategies. This is maybe when you would say, do whatever you want, but restrict all your eating to 8 hours. Or do whatever you want, but make sure you have a minimum of 6 meals a day. It doesn't matter what options you pick, you're just putting them in a situation and circumstance where you've limited lots of options, but you still make them feel completely free in their choices. The opposite approach would be what I call a baker. So the difference between cooking and baking, baking requires precision, cooking is more feel and by style and by concepts. A baker, if you were to give them cooking concepts, would actually have the same level of anxiety because they don't have the detail. What do I do? You didn't tell me exactly what to have. I'm sure I don't know the choices, and then they start getting upset and they lack clarity. They want the clarity. The clarity is relieving to them. So in this particular case, you wouldn't want to say something like have 6 servings a day. You might want to give them exact amounts. You might want to say, I want 2 pieces of fresh whole fruit, I want 2 cruciferous vegetables, and I want 3 whatevers. Okay, great. Or maybe it's exact amounts. I want 4 ounces of cooked broccoli, I want a half a cup of steamed rice, and then you can switch that out and you give them exact examples. You get my points here, right? So for those individual people, you might have more success telling them exactly what to do, even if those numbers are a little bit off. The fact that they have clear, specific instructions. These people oftentimes do well on eating the same thing every single day. Here's exactly what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and here are your 2 snacks. Nothing to think about? Great, love it, no problem. It's relieving. For some of you, you're thinking same thing every day, oh my God, I'd hate my life. And some of you are thinking same thing every day, oh my God, I would love that. Personality traits. All of that can still accomplish those calorie, macro, and micronutrient goals, but maximizes your adherence because you're putting it into a system that works better for that person's personality.